Customs is a peculiar issue. I think recently, GNA or other, this week, came up with a story that despite all that has been done in the past, the menace is still persisting. What are we doing? Short of marching there and grandstanding in front of the cameras and making noises that people want to hear. What concrete steps have we put in place to ensure that all these exposés, all these evidence, all these news stories about corrupt practices going on in customs, in the police administration, in the judicial service, in the ministries, departments, and agencies of state, in all the other public institutions, what actions are we taking to ensure that we nip this issue in the bud? Even if we can't, and I doubt if any human institution will be able to eradicate corruption completely. If we can't eradicate it, at least we minimize the incidence of it. Others have taken measures which have worked. I don't see why we can't. And we're getting towards the Christmas season. This is a time for gift giving. And in other jurisdictions, and even in this country, I just learned pleasantly that some of the international organizations have introduced that here. No worker in any institution can receive a gift above a certain value. You need to declare it. Because if we leave that door open, under the guise of gift giving, people will seek to buy the loyalty, the services of public servants who are supposed to serve the state. So we need to institute measures which will ensure that no public official can receive a gift above a certain value without declaring it. If you have an ethics officer in and every institution should have one, an ethics officer within the institution who would train and sensitize people as to how to steer through this particular minefield, which people exploit to seek to buy the loyalties and the mandates of the people. If the ethics officer is there teaching people the do's and the don'ts, where the slippery slopes are, and what they can do to avoid being caught in that net, it would help. The ethics officer can also determine that this gift is not suitable for you to receive, so please return it, because it may have the tendency of corrupting you inadvertently. Not many people would think that. But the flip side is that people will also say that, hey, our salaries are not enough. So it's these little things which cushion us against the harsh economic climate in which we live. But if we're serious about fighting corruption, we need to tighten the nuts and bolts and reduce the opportunities for temptation, because the temptation is there. And there are various people who need various things from the various people working in the various MDAs. And so they will come bearing gifts. And after the gifts have been received, they will use that as an avenue to also say, oh, I've done you a good turn in the past. You also bend over backwards to me. Another issue which I think we ought to look at, and which is a matter of great concern to all of us, and I'm not doing this because I'm MPP or I belong to another. I think that this is an issue that we ought to look at dispassionately in the interest of the nation. If we consider reducing the charges that we impose on importers at the ports of entry in this country, it would make it easier for them to pay and reduce the incentive for customs officials to also do things under the cover and let them get away with paying very little. And even that very little doesn't go to the states, but it goes to the customs officials. Let us reduce the opportunities for corrupting our people. The port's charges are so high that there is a great incentive for people to pay a little bit to some customs official who bend the rules and enable them clear their goods without paying what is due to the state. And when we do that, I think we can all sit down and think about a creative way of making this work. Economies of scale. People would much rather pay to the state than to the corrupt customs official if the charges were reasonable. And so they would find a way, the more people would be amenable to paying their customs charges and duties, the more the state would also derive the revenue that it seeks. We've pegged it so high that people feel compelled, if they are unable to pay those charges, to find illegal ways, irregular ways of getting their goods out without paying the charges that they're supposed to pay. All these activities, and mind you, we don't live in isolation. We live, right now, it's with a click of a button. Our news is all out there. With all these allegations about corruption in the various places, the actions and omissions of public officials, which is all out there, I'm not surprised that Transparency International has reduced our rating in terms of the Corruption Perception Index. But if we also take concrete steps to also address this issue, that news will also get out there, and it will also help to improve our rating. So let us think about how we can make it easier for our people to obey the law. And when they do break the law, let us also forget about the whom you knows and the pressure being brought upon the people who are going to apply the sanctions. Let us apply the sanctions. Use the carrot and stick approach. Reward good behavior and punish bad behavior, and use that as an example for everybody else to follow. And let us stop politicizing everything. I sincerely hope that we're not also going to hear that, oh, in the MPP era, the CPI was this high and A, B, C, and D. Progressively, we've come a long way. Even within the NPP era, our standing in terms of the Corruption Perception Index was improving relative to what we inherited. We've all come a long way. We've slipped a bit. There are things that we can do. We can't continue to do the same things and expect different results. If the measures aren't working, let us reconsider the structures we've put in place, strengthen the institutions, strengthen the sanctions regime and the rewards regime, and see if whatever new measures we put in place would also improve the situation and reduce the opportunities for corruption.
Okay. Well, just to give you some more information, there were 17 surveys conducted with respect to the 183 countries, and they looked at 3 key areas. One has to do with enforcement of anti-corruption laws, access to information, and then conflict of interest. Cases of conflict of interest, access to information, and then enforcement of anti-corruption laws. So it's not just about enactment. It has more to do with enforcement.
There's another thing that I needed to add, just a brief point. The implementation of the Procurement Act. I believe that currently we're doing a lot more sole sourcing than we used to in the past. I think we ought to look at that very carefully because it is a serious avenue for corruption and it's defeating the purpose for which the act was enacted in the first place.
Okay.